Welcome to Illustration and Media Digital Applications. This is Module 3, Unit 3.1, the Move, Scale, and Rotate commands. Today, we will be downloading components. We'll be learning how to move those objects in a SketchUp environment. We'll be scaling and creating mirror images using the Scale command. And we will be rotating our objects and rotating and making a copy of those objects. I'm Sherry McKinley. Let's get started. Okay, we're going to be getting started now, learning our new commands for the day. So the first thing I'm going to get everyone to do is go to the View menu, and I just want to make sure that everybody is going to have their large tool set available to them at the top of their screen, which is all of the shortcut menus for us. So you want to go to the View menu, and then click on Toolbars. Simply select Large Tool Set, and you'll see how we can get the shortcuts now for doing the rest of our commands today. Secondly, to prepare us for learning how to move, scale, and rotate, I'm going to introduce you to a very exciting location called Get Models. And it looks like a gray box with a red SketchUp icon in it. We're going to click on that. Now what that button is, it's a worldwide sharing site to grab a whole bunch of SketchUp models that you can use for your models. You can edit them, and we're going to be doing some of that today. So the first thing I want you to type in, when you have this window at the top here, I'm going to get everyone to type in the word sofa. We're going to search some sofas online and download one. You will need to be connected to the internet to do this, so go ahead and click on search. And the one that I'm going to get everyone to use, I think, will be the first one that you see here. Okay, we're going to double click on that icon, and then we're going to click on Download Model. It will ask you if you want to load this directly into your SketchUp model, and we're going to go ahead and say yes. Okay, now you'll see that my cursor's holding on to the sofa now, and if I'm moving my mouse around, I can place it where I want, and when I like the location, I'm going to kind of keep it around there, I'm going to go ahead and click or left click one time. And you'll see that it's there. Now, a blue box will appear around your object. What that is telling us is that that object is what is called a component. That's a component. It means that all of the surfaces, lines, planes, everything about that object has been protected by a box called a component. And later we're going to learn how to make one of those ourselves. But for today, we're going to learn our commands move, rotate, and scale by using a component. So we have that place. Let's orbit till we see the front of it. And we're going to be starting with the move command. Okay, so I'm going to get everyone to zoom out a little bit and to orbit to see the front of that. Now what I'm going to also get everyone to do to prepare us for the move is to also draw, I think we'll do a 20-foot by 20-foot rectangle. This is review from the other week on our floor. And that's just going to give us a floor surface to practice our move command. Now the move command is located under the Tools menu. You'll see Move there, okay? There's also a shortcut icon that looks like this. I'm just hovering over it here. That will allow us to move. Now, if you are making notes on this, what you might want to write down is that move is best or more successful when you actually try to do it in a few steps, and I'm going to go through those steps with you. The first step we want to do when we perform a move, we're basically going to try to move this object onto the floor beside it, is to select the object. So we're going to select the object first, and then we're going to click on our move icon. Now, the first thing we want to do is we want to basically get the object into the space. We can't tell if it's going to be floating yet or if it's in the right location yet, but we just want to get it into the space. Now, what I would suggest, before you just click on the object randomly, which you can do, pick a second location, pick another location. That part's fine. but it doesn't tell us if the object is floating in midair or if it's too low. So before you pick, I want you to just hover over a corner of the object, and when you get to the endpoint of the object, it'll actually say endpoint in object. So before I click, I want to have it say that first. So when I see that, I'll click. Then I'm going to start to hover my mouse to the floor, and when it's connected to the floor, it will say on face. And when it says on face, you can go ahead and click. So now that we have the object and the endpoint of the object on the face of our floor, we certainly want to orbit to see, is it in the floor? Do I need to raise it up? Do I need to sort of move it to the left, right, or to the back? And so we want to do that. And so it's all a matter of now using our colored axis. The first thing I'm noticing is that the feet are down through the floor. So that's interesting. So I do want to move it up a little bit. So we're going to go to sort of phase 2 or step 2 of move. Click on the move again. Be orbited so you can kind of see the side of it a little bit. Now anywhere on the object is okay to click. There, for example, but we want to carefully begin to be moving it where it's telling us that I am moving it on the blue axis. So I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, I do want to move it on the blue axis, and I'm going to move it up, and until I see those feet approach or sit on the floor, good. I'm good on the blue axis. Now I'm going to orbit again. This time I'm going to move a little bit to the left so it looks like it's centered, and I'm going to click anywhere on the object again, click, hover, and notice I'm getting that green axis appear. So that way I know I'm only moving it left and right. I'm not randomly moving it up in the air. That's what happens with move, is you find that you have floating chairs sometimes. So I'm just going to move it a little bit to the left, make sure that it shows up as green, and I'm good to go. Then I'm going to move it back on the red axis. This will help me to be orbited above my work. And again, I'm going to go back to the move icon, click anywhere on the object, hover my mouse, make sure that it shows up red until it appears to be in place there. Now it's very important that you do those steps, because if you don't, you can be randomly moving your object, you don't know where it's going, and it's going to look right, but it won't actually be correct. Now, you can also click, hover, and type a distance at any time. If you have a specific distance that you want to move it, you can certainly do that as well. Again, we always select the object first in SketchUp so that it knows which object we're referring to. Then we go to the command we wish to do, and then we can click on the object, we can hover it, and I could, for example, type. Let's say I want to move that sofa 4 feet, enter. And I just moved it exactly 4 feet. Let's try that again going forward. Click on the object, hover in the red direction, and this time let's type 6 feet, enter. Okay, now that I have mastered the move command, I'm able to move my object wherever it is I want to move it to. We're going to now try the scale command, and I love the scale command. It's so useful for us, and we're going to be learning a lot more about it later, but let's learn the basics now. Now, we've understood that whenever we want to perform a command in SketchUp, we do have to select the object first. So our sofa should be selected and be blue. Now, scale is also located under the Tools menu, and you can find it there, and you'll also see a shortcut right about there, which is a few over from your move command. So let's click on scale. The minute we do, we get some interesting green grips that appear for us, and I'm going to go through what each of those mean by zooming in a little closer for you. The first one, or the corner grip that you'll see, is called Uniform Scale. Now, if I click on that, I will be typing in a scale factor for an object, or I can make it uniformly larger by dragging the object in that direction, or uniformly smaller by going in that direction. Now watch what's happening in your scale or your measurements window here. It's giving me a scale factor. If I typed 2, for example, I would get an object twice as big as my original object. That would be like 200%. And if I clicked on the corner grip and hovered and typed 0.5, then I would get an object that was half as big as my original size. So I can either type the value for uniform scale, or I can click, hover, and click again just to randomly choose a visual scale for my object. But it's important to note that that is a uniform scale. It doesn't change the depth or the ratio between the depth, the width, or the height at all. It keeps it actually completely according to how it was originally. Now, if we go to the top, middle, top front, top side, top back, or the same with the bottom. So in other words, we're in the middle, but we're not in the perfect middle. Then this will actually change the object scale in two directions only, depending on where you click. So you'll either change only the height and the depth, and you won't affect the width, or you'll change only the width and the depth, but you won't affect the height. Depends on which one you're choosing. Now, to be honest, I really don't tend to use this scale option, but it is there for you. Okay, so let's say if I click on this bottom middle one and I begin to change the scale, you'll notice it's flashing a little in front of you because it's trying to change the width and the height while it's keeping the depth completely consistent no matter what I do. It's going to force that. And when you do click on any of those, when you look in the bottom right hand side of your screen, you'll be seeing how the scale factor changes in only two directions and in not the third direction. So in this one, for example, I'm changing the height and the depth, but not the width. It forces the width to stay the same. Try that, but you may never really use that in SketchUp. Now, my favorite one I think here is finding the perfect middle grip. So there's a perfect middle, there's a perfect middle. It's anything that's not on one of the yellow lines. Now, if I chose the top middle grip here, this is going to force scale in the blue direction while maintaining the ratio or the original size of the red and green, the width and the depth. So if I decide to scale something here, I'm going to only be affecting the height. And that's what we often do. We might have a window that we bring in and we only want to change the height of the window. So you can see I can do it there. Hit escape if you want to cancel out of that. Or I can change only the depth. I can almost turn a sofa into some sort of day bed or some sort of bed, make it unrecognizable. Or I can only change the width. Now this is one I use a lot. If I wanted to make a sofa be wider, you know, just a little bit wider than it was originally, I might say, okay, I'm going to make that wider and make the scale factor be 1.2, which is saying make it 120% of its original width. And there you would have it. And you can see that you can scale it in that way. Now, the final use of scale is that we can actually mirror an object. You can see that this this is a sectional that has a chaise on the one side. What if I needed it to be completely opposite or a mirror image of what you're seeing in front of you? Well, I could use the middle grip to begin to click, hover, and change the width until I keep going, and you'll see it actually pops out the other side and gives me a complete mirror image of what I had originally. Likewise, I could do that to the top, create a mirror image. It would go completely, you know, underneath and be upside down, or I could go in this direction as well and create a mirror image going on the other side. Now, the scale factor for a mirror image, by the way, is -1. In other words, it's going to be opposite, but still a scale factor of 1 to give me a complete, perfect mirror image of my original shape. Okay, to finish off today, we're going to be learning how to use the rotate command, and it also has a few difficult steps that we want to be aware of. Let's go ahead and select our sofa. Let's move it back to sort of the center of our room here, and then let's go to our zoom menu, right click, and zoom a window around our object so that we're a little bit closer to it. Now finally, the rotate command is also located under the tools menu, and it does exactly that. It rotates our object, so we are constantly using the rotate command. And the shortcut for rotate is here. It's right beside the move command, and it looks a little bit like orbit, so don't confuse it. It's how we rotate our objects. So let's select our object, and then we're going to click on rotate. And when we come to our floor space, you're going to see a blue or a green or black or red protractor appear. Those colors are very important. When we see the blue protractor, it tells us that we're going to be rotating along the floor or around or about the floor. And so it's basically just turning our object in that direction. If I tend to see a green protractor, then that would actually rotate the object about that axis and it would somersault it. We don't do that very often, but sometimes we do if I wanted to have a leaning mirror, something like that. And if I get a red protractor, I'm snapping to the face of the sofa here, then I would basically be cartwheeling my object. Now, if you're ever getting into rotate and something like this starts to happen and you don't mean for this to happen, it can be a very panicky feeling in the beginning. Just hit escape to get out of whatever it is you started to do by mistake, and you're just basically escape, and that will fix everything. Let's go through the steps of rotate together. Step 1, select the object. Step 2, select rotate. Step 3, we'll try it along the blue axis first, is to click somewhere on the floor where the color is correct for your protractor. So I'm going to click here. Now that essentially will become a base point for me, or a pivot location for my rotate. Ideally, it would be right in the middle of the object, but as long as I'm close to the object, it usually works. So as long as it's blue and I'm close, I can click. So go ahead and click one time here. Click. Now for some reason in SketchUp, you have to begin to hover your mouse or turn your protractor and click again before you are able to rotate the object. So we're going to do a second click. And then we're going to hover our mouse again and begin to turn our object. Now at this point, I can click when I'm done rotating, or I can type. And if I want a perfect 90-degree angle, I'm going to hover and type 90, enter. And I did it, rotated the object at 90 degrees. Let's do that again with the blue protractor. This time let's rotate it 180 degrees. So let's do that again. We're going to start from scratch. Click the object, click on the rotate command, click once on the floor, hover, click again, hover, type 180, enter, and now the object has been turned 180 degrees. We're going to try it once using one of those side rotates or red or green rotates. So we're going to go to the rotate command and try to snap to one of the edges of the sofa where it's red. Let's click there, turn and click again, and turn our object. Let's rotate it back to an angle of 10 degrees. So 10, enter. And when we orbit, we'll see that we've literally done just that. We've rotated the object at 10 degrees. Let's finish it off by rotating it back. So click, rotate, find the red protractor or axis, click, hover and turn, click again, hover, and begin to rotate in the direction you wish to go, and then type 10 and enter.
SketchUp demo, I want to cover how the rotate tool works. So what I'm going to do is create a simple shape to have something to rotate. I'm just going to use a rectangle that's 10 feet by 10 feet and use the push-pull tool to extrude it up another 10 feet. So we just have a big cube. Now, if we want to rotate this, the first thing we're going to need to do is select it. So to select something entirely, remember we can either click and drag to select the entire object, or we can triple click on it to get the entire thing. Once we have that, we can pick the rotate tool. The rotate tool is a little tricky in that it will let you pick the X, Y, or Z axis to rotate around. So if we let it lay flat on the ground, or we could even be on the top surface, it will turn blue. That means we're going to spin around the blue Z-axis. So that's this one right here. So that means it will spin around that vertical axis. So I will click a starting point And then what it wants to do is have a reference angle. So I will just click a line straight out in one direction or the other. So I might just go this way. And once I click, I can then pull my mouse around and it will spin around that blue z-axis. While I'm doing that, notice that the value control box in the lower right hand corner says angle now. So this will be the angle from the starting point, which will be 0, and then we can watch that angle grow. So now I'm at 39 and 40 and 50. So if I wanted to flip it 90, I could just watch and click when I get there. If I wanted to do it again on the blue z-axis, I could click it, pick my reference angle, and then rotate it, for example, 50 degrees. I can type in 50, enter, and now we have that at 50 degrees. If I click, make my reference angle along the side, and go back this way, you'll see that I could easily take it from this arbitrary angle, maybe I didn't know that was at 50 degrees, and spin it back to be at a perfect 90-degree angle with either axis. Okay, so it's really easy to get something nice and lined up. If I hold my mouse over a corner and let it flip to the green axis, pick my reference angle, you'll see that it's now spinning around the green axis and will behave in the same way. And I can also let it flip, pick my reference angle, and go around the red. So you can actually spin around all 3 angles. While I'm doing that, I can even create a copy of what I'm rotating. So I could pick, and I'll let it go along the bottom, pick my reference angle, and then when I start to move it, I'll hit the control key and get a plus next to the rotate symbol on my cursor. That means I'm actually going to rotate a copy instead. So now I could have something that looks like this. If I hit Control Z to just back up a step, I can triple select, get my box here, hit the rotate tool, but instead of picking a point on the object rather, I could pick a point away from it, pick my axis line, and you'll see that you can rotate around a point that's away from your object. And if I hit the control key and have 2, you'll see that now my copy is rotating away from my object. So your base point does not actually have to be attached to your object. Okay, so that's the basics of how the rotate tool works and how you can make a copy and actually rotate the copy at once so you don't have to do it in 2 separate moves.